like to begin, if I may, by first acknowledging all of our elected officials who've joined us today and special guests. Certainly, and he'll be speaking in a few moments, but want to acknowledge and thank Governor Andrew Cuomo for being here this morning. And certainly the owner of, where's Mike? Mike, where are you? Oh, there you are, at the back. Mike McKeon, who's the owner of Silk O'Loughlin's. You know, in the old days, we called it O'Loughlin's. Now they call it Ollie's and O's, and it's getting shorter and shorter as people get lazier and lazier. But we're delighted he's here. My former traveling companion in the State Assembly, Town of Greece Supervisor Bill Rylick is here this morning. New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Commissioner Basil Sagos is here this morning, as well as Homeland Security Commissioner Patrick Murphy. Where's Commissioner Murphy? Good morning, sir. Our members from the state legislative delegation, Senator Joe Robach is here this morning. New York Senator Rich Funke. Good morning, Richard. New York State Senator Pam Helming. Good morning, Pam. My other former colleague in the State Assembly, Mark Johns, is here this morning. Mark, thank you for being here. Town Supervisor of Irondequoit, Dave Seeley, is here this morning. And I thought, I know that Monroe County Executive Cheryl D'Onofrio and Monroe County Clerk Adam Bello have both been invited, and I expect will join us before the morning's out. And I also want to acknowledge former Lieutenant Governor, a great friend, and the President and CEO of the Greater Rochester Chamber of Commerce, Bob Duffy. So let me begin. We obviously have a lot of important folks to speak and to talk about why we're here, but I first and foremost want to thank the governor. As I said to him in a phone conversation the other day, he is always got our back. In this region, he has devoted so much energy and attention to the economic needs of this community, the Finger Lakes region broadly, and has brought new energy and new life to economic development and job creation. But he's also been, in my view, the governor in my lifetime who has been more devoted to making sure that people are safe and healthy. Natural disasters, things like we faced here in Monroe County, and he has spent countless hours and devoted substantial resources. And we're here today at O'Loughlin's because they, like so many businesses and homes along the waterfront, are getting all too used to putting up sandbags and break walls every year in preparation for another round of devastating flooding. And that's why the governor's here, because of his commitment to this. He's been here time and time again. So I want to just acknowledge the incredible work and partnership of Andrew Cuomo. Thank you, Governor. And we're standing out on the against the break wall, which is new because we've had this problem now for several years, and we can no longer afford to wait and react. That's why we've met with members of the International Joint Commission. I've had the opportunity to meet with them in Washington and here in Rochester and implore them to act now during the fall before we have to deal with lake levels next spring that will, again, in my view, have the potential of reaching record levels. And at the federal level, I'm working with John Katko and Anthony Brindisi, my colleagues from upstate New York, to encourage and strongly urge the IJC to reduce more lake levels now in the fall while we have the opportunity. In the House, we've appropriated money for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to continue to look at ways to build additional resiliency and work with our state partners. And again, thank the governor for his $300 million commitment to the regional resiliency that we're working. And in our view, the next question of flooding isn't an if, but a when. And thankfully, we do have a governor who's committed to this, who has been an incredible partner, who has consistently gone to bat for our region, and has always the best interests of upstate New York in mind. So again, I want to thank the governor for being here, for his continued commitment, for his partnership, for being with us not only here today, but for every day fighting on behalf of Irondequoit and lakeside communities all across New York. With that, it gives me a great privilege to introduce a leader in this fight, someone who's just done an amazing, inspired job as the Commissioner of the Department of Environmental Conservation, the Honorable Commissioner Basil Sagos.
Thank you. Thank you, Congressman Morelli. Well, as you all know, New York has experienced really an incredible round of flooding in 2 of the last 3 years. rising water levels have impacted where we stand right now, as well as thousands of other homes and businesses, entire neighborhoods underwater, sewage plants, treatment plants underwater, tourism suffering, the stigma of tourism, certainly stigma of flooding on tourism. And throughout all of that, both in 2017 and 2019, the governor has really set the standard. His commitment to this area, to this shoreline, to the residents and businesses here, in how the state responds and how it cares. The state of emergency this year, which then led to this unprecedented response, more than 1 million sandbags, over a mile of these water barriers, prevention of oil spills, 369 permits issued almost on the spot this summer at DEC, in addition to the 1,000 from 2017. Hundreds of pumps to protect communities and pump out flooded basements. Those are some of the short-term actions that, frankly, saved lives and saved the regional economy. But now the governor's taken this to the next level with some long-term planning that truly sets this entire region up for success in the future through this resiliency and economic development initiative. And I think the story here is that New York has been acting. New York has been taking bold actions really nonstop to protect these communities. Today, the governor is taking this commitment to the next level. The International Joint Commission has, frankly, a duty to protect all the residents and businesses along the shoreline, stretching from the Niagara River all the way up to the dam in Messina, and has been shown very powerfully in 2017 and this summer, 2019, the IJC has failed in that duty. So today, the governor is announcing that we are suing the IJC. The lawsuit alleges negligence. It alleges also public nuisance, private nuisance, and trespass. In short, the IJC knew and certainly should have known that its management of these waters could have mitigated the damage to the shoreline and property owners all up and down the coast here, and they failed to take appropriate action. So our lawsuit, the state's lawsuit, seeks compensatory damages, and this will help make New Yorkers whole. There should be no surprise on the part of the IJC that we're taking this action. The governor's been outspoken since day one about the flood conditions, the problem of Mother Nature compounded by the mismanagement of the IJC. The governor has written personally to the IJC leadership a number of occasions, demanding the maximization of water releases over the Robert Moses Dam, prioritizing the public over the interest of shipping, reimbursing New York State for all of its costs, its going costs, and making these funds available for resiliency projects. And yet all of that has been largely falling on deaf ears. So we find ourselves today having to turn to the courts. And it is an unfortunate situation when you have to drag an entity like the IJC into court to get action. But we are at our last straw, and the courts are where we are turning. So I applaud the governor for taking these actions, for being a stalwart leader here on the waterfront, and for looking towards the long-term future through all of the actions he's taking. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Town of Greece Supervisor, Bill Rollick.
Thank you, Commissioner Sagos. Now, this is an important day not only for Rochester, for all the lakeshore communities. I'd like to thank the governor for his continued support and his assistance that as we recover through these historic water levels. No one has been a better partner for local governments as we join together to fight to rebuild along the lakefront. Governor Cuomo has shown up both in person each and every time we've had an incident, every step of the way. As was previously mentioned, Lake Ontario is important, a vital aspect for the economic and environmental aspects to our communities. Growing tourism through great fishing, boating, providing endless memories for families whose homes are on the lakefront. That is why it is important more than ever to fight for greater management and the increased accountability of the IJC. We cannot settle for less. As a newly appointed member of the International Lake Ontario St. Lawrence River Board, I will fight every day to make the change and ensure that we are protecting our residents, we are protecting the lake shore, and we are making sure that the water levels are let out at the maximum possibility each and every day. Not letting a day go by, not even during the times of the eye levels, during the icing over of the St. Lawrence. More can be done, and I've expressed that to the commission already in several meetings. We also should look at shutting down shipping a week early. At the end of the season, and starting it a week later at the beginning of the season. There are measures that can be done beyond what's been done so far, but we need to do that for all the residents along the shoreline. Our communities, our families, our very way of life depend on us taking this action. Lastly, we would not be moving so swiftly and so successfully toward our shoreline resiliency measures today if it weren't for the leadership and the dedication of Governor Cuomo. Your commitment to this reason has not wavered, and I want to thank you and all of your teams for the support since day one. You've been there every time. You've been to my community at least 3 times, and you've been there numerous times beyond that. Every time you and the state commissioner and all involved have been there for us with whatever requests we needed. In 17, we filled over 250,000 sandbags supplied by the state of New York, supplied a sandbag filling machine, supplied help from prisoner inmates, whatever was needed for the town, pumps, I can go on and on. The point was we received the support we needed. Thank you, Governor. And you never wavered, you never delayed. It was there almost immediately upon our request. So at this time, it's my great pleasure to introduce the 56th Governor of the state of New York, Andrew Cuomo. Yeah, absolutely, Governor. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be at Silk O'Loughlin's today on a beautiful day. We have been here when it was not quite as beautiful, and as beautiful as it is today is as destructive as it can be, as we've all seen. To Supervisor Rylick, you see the character of a person when things are at their worst. And when things are at their worst, Supervisor Rylick has really stepped up to the plate and gotten his hands dirty and shown amazing leadership. And I want to applaud him and everyone else who has stood up and actually fought for their constituents and fought for the people of New York during the immediate aftermath of a storm, but even more, making their voice heard to the IJC and not backing down and continuing to advocate. Thank you, Bill Rylick. We have DEC Commissioner Basil Sagos, who I believe is the best environmental commissioner in the country. He also happens to be an attorney, which is especially helpful today in this lawsuit. So thank you, Basil. Let's give him a round of applause. We have our Homeland Security Commissioner, Pat Murphy, who's here, who's done an outstanding job. Responding to these emergencies the way we do, this has never happened before in the state. This is the first time the state has been called on to do this, first time we've had situations like this, and he has really delivered time and time again. Thank you very much, Pat Murphy. We have my colleagues from the Assembly and the Senate who have been out there and been supportive, and we have a record state relief package thanks to them, and I'd like to give them a round of applause. And our Congressman Joe Morelli, former member of the New York State Assembly. He has now ascended, in his opinion, to the federal government. I would question whether that is an ascendancy or not. State government, we actually got things done. We actually produced for the people. I don't know that he can say that now, but it is a higher level of government. That is true. He has responded accordingly. He no longer returns my phone calls, the congressman, friends for 30 years. To get him on the phone now, I have to send a staff member to get in his vicinity. I get on the phone and then they just put the cell phone to the congressman's ear. But even though he won't talk to me, whatever his district needs, you couldn't have a better advocate, a better champion, a better fighter, a person who actually delivers, Congressman Joe Morelli. And we were just joined by the county executive. I'd like to welcome her, County Executive D'Onofrio. The facts of the matter are plain, right? The IJC's function is to manage the lake level. That is their job, to manage the lake level. They have failed to manage the lake level, period. End of story. It was their job, they failed. They came up with a plan called the 2014 plan. Within weeks of the 2014 plan going into effect, which was actually in 2017, within weeks of their putting their plan into effect, we had the first flooding, the 2017 flooding, 248 feet. We have pleaded with the IJC to attend to the New York side of the issue. We have sent numerous pieces of correspondence. There have been meetings, there have been dialogues, there have been phone calls. The congressman has been meeting with them. All sorts of officials have been meeting with the IJC. They have been wholly unresponsive and have taken no action that has made the situation any better. We had dialogue for 2 years from 2017 to 2019. What happens in 2019? There's another flood worse than the 2017 flood, 249 feet, after all the conversations. So, because of what the IJC has done, the state and the people of the state have sustained hundreds of millions of dollars in damages. The 2017 flood, the state alone did about $170 million in flood relief. 2019, we spent about $50 million in emergency management relief. We then said we're now in the midst of doing $300 million, an unprecedented amount from the state, to do long-term resiliency, because we do believe this is going to be the new normal. And the state is paying that amount. That is without the amount of money that the county has spent, that the town has spent. That's without the money spent by the private homeowners and the private businesses. The cost to the state of New York for these two floods will be easily over $1 billion when all the numbers are accounted. Why should New Yorkers pay that $1 billion? You know, when the state gives funding, that funding comes from the people of the state of New York. That's tax dollars that they are spending. And literally, it's going to be above $1 billion. So today we announce a lawsuit. Litigation is a last resort. It comes from frustration. It comes from the lack of responsiveness of the IJC. It comes from their clear negligence and from their series of excuses. That's all you get from the IJC are excuses. Well, we have to balance the need between shipping and between the lake level. We have to balance the need between New York and Canada. Well, we have Mother Nature is now, and climate change is the problem. No, the problem is the IJC. Those are factors. But at the end of the day, it was the IJC's job to manage those factors. That was their function. Manage the balance between shipping and flooding. Manage the balance between New York and Canada. Manage the inflow from climate change. That was their function. And they have failed again and again and again. The lawsuit is a hard case. I will tell you that. This is an international entity, and it is going to be a difficult case for us to make. But it is our last resort. We have tried everything else. It is a cry for help from the state of New York, and our expression of frustration that they have done absolutely nothing to help New Yorkers deal with this situation. And it is unfair that we should be shouldered with over $1 billion in costs when the IJC has done absolutely nothing to reduce the damage to the state of New York. I'm proud of what the state is doing. I'm proud of the way we've responded with our partners to the emergencies. I'm proud of the way the first responders have operated. I'm proud that we're now doing $300 million in resiliency. We are a step ahead. We do believe this is going to happen again, and we want to stop future damage, and I'd rather invest $300 million in resiliency than pay $200 million to repair damages that are just going to happen over and over and over again. But we need help. It is unfair for New Yorkers to shoulder this burden. We've said that a number of ways. There's been no response, hence the decision today to bring legal action against the IJC. The old expression is, I'm tired of getting the short end of the stick. New York has gotten the short end of the stick from the IJC time and time and time again. My job is to fight for the people of the state of New York. That's what I am hired and elected to do, and that's what we are going to do. Tired of getting the short end of the stick, which in this case, the analog is tired of getting the high end of the lake. There's no reason why New Yorkers should have to deal with this the way we've had to deal with it. And that's what this lawsuit expresses. Thank you all for everything you have done. We're going to get through this. We're going to get better for it. We're going to make the shoreline better for it. I just want to make sure that our costs are fairly accounted for. But thank you all very much.